Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, we give a salute to service. It's Memorial Day, so we got to do it, right? Plus, we'll talk a little Jimmy G as well. It's all coming up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, May 29th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest edition of the show. If you're checking us out on YouTube, that's because of my guy Ari. Many thanks to my dude. Does a great job each and every day making sure we're up on YouTube, looking good and sounding good. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You could always hit me up on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. Or if you want to be a part of the show, the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line is always wide open like some old school TV antennas. 707-654-4693. Today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast on this Memorial Day is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And got a lot to get to on today's show, but it's not going to be a normal show like we usually have. And I've kind of gone back and forth on this one only because there was a lot of news that came out over the weekend having to do with Raider quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. But I overruled my own decisions because I realized we could talk about Jimmy Garoppolo all week long, and I really think that having a salute to service show is more important. And on my radio show on Friday, I was blessed to have a killer show, just an amazing show that was all salute to service. I just had a hell of a lineup. I'll tell you right now, former NFL player, former Green Beret Nate Boyer was on the show. Former Raiders running back Napoleon McCallum was on the show. Gabriella Rice, a.k.a. Lucille. You see her on Twitter all the time. You see her at Allegiant Stadium all the time. Big Super Raider fan. My guy Jess Estrada, Army Vet Jess, another big-time Raider fan, was on the show. John Arnold, a.k.a. Peg Leg Raider, he was on the show as well. Former Raider quarterback Jay Schrader was on the show. He was the Raiders 2022 Salute to Service nominee. He was on it. So it was all things military. So you're actually going to hear a couple of those interviews coming up on today's show. Before we get to that, though, I do want to go ahead and acknowledge what was going on and the news that rolled out over the weekend about Jimmy Garoppolo. And as I mentioned, we'll do some more deep dive in what it means for the Raiders moving forward starting on tomorrow's show. But Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk, I got to give him a lot of credit. Him and his people there, they do a heck of a job covering the NFL. And Mike Florio has the lawyer background, so he does a lot of deep diving and looking into contracts. And he came up with Jimmy G's contract and found out that he did, in fact, fail his physical, which is something that's been talked about quite a bit now. We knew that happened when he didn't sign his contract the day he was supposed to sign his contract back in March, and it was actually another day. And, of course, it wasn't reported that right at the time that he had failed his physical, but we all knew that something wasn't right? And then, of course, we talked to head coach Josh McDaniels on OTAs, the days of OTAs last week on Thursday, and Jimmy Garoppolo was not available because he hasn't been cleared. Well, in fact, he did fail his physical, and the Raiders massively, and this is according to Mike Florio, massively reworked his contract. So basically, he had $11.25 million signing bonus. They got rid of that signing bonus, and basically it became his just part of his base salary in 2023. And the deal, the bottom line of this is, if Jimmy G doesn't ever pass a physical, one, he'll never play for the Raiders, and two, they'll never have given him a dime. And, I know it sounds a little extreme saying that he will never play for the Raiders. There's actually a possibility he might not ever play for the Raiders. I mean, that's just what it basically is. I mean, they made him sign a waiver, a contract waiver. They put him a addendum in his contract. It's called Addendum G. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. It's really deep diving. And like I said, you can go check out Pro Football Talk. It basically says Garoppolo failed his physical. If he doesn't pass a physical by the time the season starts, the Raiders can move on at no cost. And so then what? Then what do the Raiders do at the quarterback position? So that's what we'll really deep dive into coming up on Tuesday and throughout the course of the week as well. And I'm actually going to have Mike Florio on my radio show sometime this week to really break it down and talk about it. So excited about that. But again, want to do the Salute to Service show because I just think it's so important. I know a lot of people have Memorial Day off, and that's great, including myself. I don't have a local radio show to do today because we're observing Memorial Day. But I always want to make sure that we remember why we're having a 3-day weekend and why we're observing Memorial Memorial Day. And there is a difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Memorial Day is for those to honor those who died in service to our country, and Veterans Day are honoring the living, the ones who served in the armed forces but are still alive and with us. But I like to just make sure we focus on the armed forces in general. Right? The ones that we lost, absolutely. Definitely want to make sure that we honor them, want to honor their families as well, because they can never get that loved one back. So definitely, dedicate that to them today. But also I want to keep in our minds that we do keep our veterans and the ones that are still currently, enlisted and fighting for our freedoms. Want to make sure we keep them in our prayers and thoughts at all times as well. So starting off our Salute to Service show today here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, former Raider quarterback Jay Schrader. Again, he was the Raiders 2022 Salute to Service nominee. He joined my radio show on Friday, Unnecessary Roughness, Raider Nation Radio 920. And we just started off talking about what Memorial Day meant to him, what Memorial Day weekend meant to him in general.
That being said, a lot of brave young men and women gave their life for us to be in this great country and do what we do. There's no question about it. I mean, we have the best situation in the world as far as our day-to-day living, and that's because of the brave young and women that went out and fought for us.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And, Jay, you've been really on the forefront. You've been, the 2022 nominee for the Salute to Service for the Raiders, and you've worked with a lot of veterans. How much pride do you take in just that relationship you have with the military?
Oh, I love it. It's been one of the best things I've ever done in my life, get involved with all these men and women in the military, to be able to help them and just to readjust to the normal life when they come back from their duties, and just to show them how much we do appreciate them.
Again, Jay Schrader joins the show here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness. Damon's got one for you.
Yeah, Jay, I remember being out there the day where the guys from the Nellis Air Force Base came down and basically had an NFL combine with the USAA. And you were throwing guys touchdowns in the end zone, really making some soldiers' day. But can you go back to that day and talk about how fun that was and how good of an experience it was?
Oh, it was fun because, you got these guys that, they don't get a chance to be on, number one, on an NFL field ever, and then to go through the drills that we do, and I was having as much fun as they were by throwing passes. I had some flashbacks. The good news is nobody hit me that day, so it was good.
And then when you talk about these soldiers, did anyone talk to you specifically about, hey, man, this means so much to me? Because like you said, these guys, they don't get to experience being on an NFL field. Did anyone personally thank you just because they were so happy to be there?
Oh, they all did. I get more out of it than I give to them. I'm sure of that because, they all come up to and they thank you for being there. And I'm just like, look, I was just a guy that threw a football for a living and, got a chance to play and do what I love to do. You guys are out there dodging bullets to keep us free and to keep us safe. And we appreciate everything that you've done.
The NFL does such a great job when it comes to honoring the military, flyover before games or, the salute to service before games. How much does it mean to you when you see how active the organization that you played for supports our military?
Oh, it means a lot. There's no question about it. It's a blessing that they continue to recognize these young men and women. I hope they continue it for a long time, and I hope they do more. I think there's more to be done. There's no question about it. And I just hope we find the avenues and the resources to help them when they come back after serving our country.
Again, former Raider quarterback Jay Schrader joins us here on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness, talking about Salute to Service. And again, you were the 2022 nominee for the Raiders. How cool was that, just to be recognized by the organization for your interactions and all the work that you were doing with veterans?
Well, it was very cool. There's no question about it. The best part for me when the Raiders brought us to the game was getting my partner, who's an Army Ranger vet, JP. He was there with me. He got to soak it in. And just to see the people interact with him and thank him for his service, and then to realize that this guy has gone out and completely flipped the script and is trying to help everyone that he possibly can. It was a fantastic day, no question. What
have you learned from him and other veterans that you interact with?
They've been through a lot more than we could ever imagine. It's unfortunate that we put these young men and women in harm's way, and some of the things that they see and do, they're very fortunate, but there's a lot of them that that's going to never go away, and we've got to find a way to help them deal with that so they can come back and be productive members of our society and to be honored for what they did.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Again, we're talking with Jay Schrader here on Raider Nation Radio 920. And, the thing about it is sometimes you need something to kind of put things in perspective. And when you talk to a veteran and they start to open up about their experiences, you start to realize that some of the problems that you think you have that are problems aren't really problems. Yeah. And so I think, Jay, it helps open up our eyes as well to realize what's important and what really isn't at times.
Oh, there's no question. I have a whole new meaning on day-to-day life because we are very fortunate. We're not waking up with bombs going off, in the middle of the night. We're not running out to see if, this group or that group is after us. We're pretty fortunate to be able to put our head down on a bed and wake up in the morning and know that we're safe.
No matter how big or small, what are some ways that you found out that you can help these veterans?
Any way possible. There's so many ways to help these veterans. They all need something, okay? And we do a lot with combat veterans. That's just kind of what the area that we've gone into just because of JP's background, in trying to find a way to help them to cope with all the things that they've seen and done, around the world. And to come back here and go, hey, look, you got to be retaught how to be a member of society because they're taught to think differently, act differently when they're in those situations. And, it really warms your heart when all of a sudden, somebody comes back and they go through a program, whether it's our program or somebody else's program, and you see them make strides within themselves to be the person they want to be. And that's the blessing that I get out of it every time.
Is there anything that you guys are currently doing right now, maybe even actively this weekend or something that you guys have done recently where you're out in the community and you kind of want to put some attention to it?
There's not anything, currently we had our big fall gala. We're going to probably end up doing another golf tournament coming up and things like that. We're kind of the opposite. We're not out in the public eye a lot. We're trying to help each individual that we possibly can. And that's where we devote our time, and we try to make that work the best we can.
No, that's good. I mean, again, everything that you can do or anything that we can do is always a blessing, no matter how big, like Damon said, no big or small. Well, Jay, you always have us as an outlet. If you ever need it, get the word out or want us to pass along a message, you know where to find us. We definitely appreciate you. Thanks for giving us some time this afternoon.
I appreciate you guys. I'm kind of losing you here, but I appreciate you guys and look forward to a great year.
So there you go. That was the conversation right there. Former Raider quarterback Jay Schrader. Again, he was a 2022 Salute to Service nominee by the Silver and Black, and he does a lot of work with the military in the Vegas area and all over. I mean, Jay's just a really good dude and never hesitates to help out our veterans, and so we got to definitely make sure we continue to do that. And also, as mentioned, make sure that we honor the ones that we lost. All the great brave men and women that we lost, and that is what Memorial Day is all about. Coming up in segment number 2, my guy Jess Estrada. That's Army Vet Jess. I always mess up his Twitter account, but that's my guy. You'll hear the conversation I had with him on my radio show on Friday. That's going to come up after I tell you about FanDuel. And I don't know how much you've been paying attention to the NBA playoffs, but man, oh man, when I didn't think that there was a chance that there would be a Game 6 or a Game 7. Here we are. There's a Game 7 going on this evening, the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. Miami looks like they've really, really messed up by allowing Boston that opportunity. But right now, it's still a good opportunity for you to join FanDuel. Make a break to FanDuel during the playoffs. You can get a no-sweat first bet up to $200,000. Wait, hold on. Right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. They upped the ante. It threw me for a loop. It was $1,000. Now it's $2,500. It made me choke. There you go, $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get that no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. $500. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast on this Memorial Day. Salute to service here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Earlier in segment number 1, you heard from former Raider quarterback Jay Schrader. But how about a super fan, a big-time fan, and really one of my best friends that I have? That's my guy, Jess Estrada. He's on Twitter at Army Vet Jess, and we always talk about, the military, the armed forces, veterans, and, anytime that I'm around him and talking with him or hanging out with him, whatever the case may be. So I had him on my radio show on Friday, and we just started off talking about Memorial Day and what it means to him.
Today, Memorial Day is really important for me because it gives me a chance to think about and reflect about all the, about all the people that have lost their lives. Normally, what I do Memorial Day is I'll spend a good chunk of the day watching, documentaries and reading stories about vets, people that, lost their lives. It's really important for me. I got a chance to visit the USS Arizona Memorial. And, when you go there, man, it's something else, man, to see the wreck there, or, it's under the water, and to think about, all the people that lost their lives there, that day. And, it really hits home,
How important is it for us to not shy away from these conversations, but have these conversations and, even talk to vets like yourself about what could possibly, be going on through your mind as you're, in society? You're very functioning, obviously. But, at the same time, just be that friend and that voice to talk to and bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, it's really important. For someone like me, I got out in 95, so it's been almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you that when you get out, when you first get out, it's completely different. You come back to, what we call civilian life, and it's kind of like people don't even know that you were gone or that what you were doing. You come back and it's totally different. So it's really weird. When I first got out, I was barely 21 years old, but it was different for me. You go through, the whole time while you're in and you're training, you're constantly training and, you're preparing yourself. And when you come back, there's nothing like that going on, and it's kind of weird. Even today, we have service members all over the world right now that are, actively protecting us. And, we go about our daily lives, without even really thinking about it. So I think it's really important, talk to vets, just kind of be there for them.
As far as what you did while you were in the Army, kind of give us some of the details of what you did. What was your role and how was, the interaction with not the team that we look at now as the Raiders, a football team, but the ultimate team, which is the United States Army.
Yeah, so when I was in the Army, I was what's called a cannon crew member. So I was in the artillery division. We shot cannons. I was on the 1-0 Deuce howitzer. Now, with the unit that I was in it was called a light division because we were what's called a rapid deployment unit. So, but one of the big things that I got to do, which was really cool, is I got to go to air assault school, which is the rappelling out of helicopters. But the cool thing is we got to rig up the helicopters or the cannons to the helicopters, and we got to do missions where they would pick the cannon up, pick us up, and fly us into somewhere where there was no roads, and they would drop the cannon, drop the crew, and we'd fire and shoot, and then the helicopter obviously would fly away, and then come back, 30 minutes later, we'd rig it back up and fly right back out. So that was really awesome.
Wow.
Experience that I've spent a lot of time inside of helicopters, so it's really cool.
All right, so I've got to ask you, you mentioned earlier about, people doing reading or research. For me, I didn't know that it was called Decoration Day up until I want to say the 1970s. But what's a documentary or a movie that you can recommend people that you really enjoy?
Some of the ones that I have are really less known, and I'd have to get the names, but they're mostly about the Vietnam War, and I even watched some of the documentaries. and they were from the Vietnamese side. You know, how they were talking about the Americans and what they went through, and how when they would, you know, see the B-52s in the air, you know, they were just terrified because they just knew that there were going to be bombs dropped. I mean, just tons of bombs, and you know, about them living underground and you know, all this crazy stuff. I don't have the names off the top of my head, but this Memorial Day, I'll definitely be watching some of the stuff about the Korean War. I have one uncle each from each side of my family, you know, my mother's side, my father's side, both that were in the Korean War.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
All right,
yeah, and I got a bunch of other uncles that were, you know, in Vietnam as well.
So for you, when you joined the military, was this more of a familiar thing, or it's like, hey, this has been in my family for years and I'm taking up the mantle?
You know, it's a little bit of both. It's something that I had wanted to do since I was a kid. You know, I always wanted to, you know, be a soldier. But, you know, in my family growing up, I'm second generation. My grandparents were from Mexico. You know, my dad had a real pride, you know, in the flag in the United States and, you know, military and stuff. So it was just something that I had just kind of always wanted to do. Yeah.
That's awesome. That it really is. And you know, anytime I was telling the story earlier, anytime we like leave the store or whatever, and there's someone outside, you know, selling flags or whatever, you'll make sure you pick one up, even though you have so many of them already. But just kind of showing that honor to the vets that are outside selling these flags, because we know it goes for a good cause. Also, just saying thank you when you see a veteran, or I see you interact with guys that have certain hats on, and you recognize, you know, where they're from and what that means, and hey, I did this. And I mean, how much pride do you take when you're able to see guys around town and just kind of interact and share stories with?
You know, I go out of my way, Q. You know, if I see a guy with a hat on, I'll talk about where he was at, where I was at, you know, what we did. You know, even when I go down to the VA, you know, I love going down there because I like talking to the older guys and, you know, just talking with them. Just, you know, we shared this, like brotherhood, you know, and so it's really cool. You know, and I love it. I have you know, I got the flag in my car. I got it outside my home. I got them inside the house. You know, I got them in my Raider room. You know, so I'm just really patriotic. You know, I'll tell you, my favorite song ever is the Defense of Fort McHenry. And you might not know what it is, but everybody in the United States knows what it is.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I know it. I don't know it by name, but I'm sure I know it.
You know it by a different name.
Okay. I'll check. What I want to know what the mystery is now. I'm trying to solve the mystery. What?
You want? Okay, so it's actually our national anthem, but that was the original name of it.
Oh, okay. See, there you go. I'm learning something. See, I didn't know what exact direction I was going, right? I knew it was something along those lines, but I wasn't 100% sure. And see, that's why we have you on the show to educate us here. And I know that we've talked about this, and you know that, you know, me and the wife and the family, we're going to go to Hawaii for vacation, and that's where your son Jason was born, right?
Yeah, he was born at Tripler Army Medical Center. Yep.
Nice. So, I mean, how cool is that? And it sounds like, you know, the Army was able to do a lot for you, and you were able to travel as well and see some areas that you would have never seen or you might not have ever seen. And so that was also a blessing that came from this.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I feel like it's a little bit of what I could do for this country. You know, I love this country. You know, it's not perfect, but, you know, at least, you know, I believe this is the greatest country, you know, on the earth, man, you know?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. I say that all the time when we all get at each other's throats and want to fight each other, and I'm like, dude, we have it a lot better than the majority of countries across the country. So, no, you're absolutely right about that. Finally, we'll get you out on this. What can we do? Right? I mean, me and you, we talk, we, you know, watch games, we do this and that, we go out and all the time. But just as a normal, everyday, average Joe, what can we do for veterans that may be out there to try to help them and try to ease them into their everyday life that might not be as easy as what it appears to be on the outside? Yeah,
so there's a lot of veteran organizations out there. I would just say, you know, donate to them. You know, talk to vets. You know, if you find out somebody's, you know, just getting out or something, you know, help them with the transition.
Right. And just don't play football against them because they'll push off in the small of your back and they'll hurt you. Just saying.
Allegedly. You know, can I just talk to you real quick about a friend of mine who lost his life?
Yes, please.
A friend of mine that I was in the Army with, his name is Staff Sergeant Scotty Bright from Mississippi. In 2005, he was killed by a roadside bomb in Baghdad.
Mm.
Yeah, and so, you know, I went to basic training with him, AIT, and then we served our first 3 years together. But, yeah, I just found out that, you know, a few years ago, I didn't know that he had died. You know, he gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country.
There's no doubt. Well, we'll definitely be thinking about him and all the other ones that lost their lives, all the folks representing the military that lost their lives on this Memorial Day and this Memorial Day weekend. And that's what we're doing here on the show today as we do the salute to service. Great nugget right there, man. Thanks so much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you do. And thanks for being a best friend of mine. I do appreciate you.
It's been great, Q. Thank you.
So there you go. That's my guy right there, Jess Estrada, a.k.a. Army Vet Jess. And I don't know why I always mess up his Twitter account, but I do. But that's my guy right there. Just telling you what, Memorial Day means to him, kind of what he goes through, what made him get into the Army, all that good stuff. I think sometimes it's good to do a deep dive, not only with, athletes, not only with coaches, but also with just normal people, right? Fans, listeners. Like, as I mentioned, I had multiple super fans on my radio show on Friday to talk about Memorial Day, and I think that sometimes we just need to take a step back and do that. So many thanks to my guy, Jess Estrada, for joining us there on my radio show on Friday, and you heard him there in segment number 2. Coming up in segment number 3, we'll keep the salute to service rolling. John Arnold, a.k.a. Peg Leg Raider. Why do they call him Peg Leg Raider? Well, literally, he has a peg leg, and he also got a peg leg autograph by one Coach Tom Flores in Canton, Ohio, during the time when he was getting inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So you'll hear Peg Leg Raider. You hear him coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Let's close things out strong. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast on this Memorial Day salute to service show that we're doing here. And you heard from my guy Jess Estrada in segment number 2. Now it's time to hear from John Arnold. Really good dude. He's got a really good family. His son went to the Navy. Was playing football in the Navy. Really good dude. So been blessed to be able to meet the family. And he was on my radio show as well, talking about his service, talked about what he did, also talking about Memorial Day and what it meant. So here he is, my guy, Peg Leg Raider, from the conversation we had on my radio show on Friday, talking about Memorial Day and what it means to him.
Well, first of all, Q, thank you so much for having me on the show, and thank you and DeMond for just putting this show together. It's so important. As we coming up to Memorial Day, for me, it's a start of summer. A lot of people are out and barbecuing and taking some time with their family and everything. But I always take a minute and reflect on those who we've lost so that we have the ability to have a good weekend with our family and barbecue and everything. And I also go out there and barbecue and everything because those that we lost would want us to continue to carry on and to celebrate and use that time that they've given us in our freedom.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And you, a 10-year active duty Army, medically retired staff sergeant in 2007, and we call you Peg Leg Raider for a reason. I mean, you have a peg leg. It's a Raider. Tom Flores autographed it for you in Canton, Ohio. I was right there when it happened. That was awesome. But I mean, just being on the ultimate team. We talk about the Raiders. We talk about football. We talk about the sports team. What is it like for you when you were on the ultimate team?
So it's funny you asked that. So as I've been listening, Hardcore Raider, I kind of got emotional, and I can't get your boy's name right because you can't get him right. So Vegas Jess, Army Vegas Jess, we gonna call him OPI guy. So okay. OPI guy was talking about being a cannon conquer. That's our slang for him, and doing air assault. So I came out of the 101st Airborne Division. If you watch Band of Brothers, that's my unit, and we are the Army's Air Assault Division. So as folks are talking, I'm just noticing my connections to all of them. I've never met them. We probably didn't serve together, but we have things in common. It's the greatest club. It's the greatest fraternity in America, the military is.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I've enjoyed listening to the stories and things that I could never imagine. You mentioned Hardcore Raider, and that conversation that he had, I mean, that really struck me to my core because we take things like that for granted. So take us back to your experiences, man. What was it like for you? I mean, long time, 10-year active duty, man. That's a long time in the military. Just take us back to what you were going through.
So I'll tell you, people thank me for my service all the time. It was my pleasure to serve. I loved every minute of it. I would put on a uniform again right now and keep going if I could. So I was intel geek. I was a signal intelligence analyst. Then I was an all-source analyst, but also as a soldier, you're an infantryman first. So when I was with the 101st, I was a 50 cal gunner, and that's where I was when I had my injury. There was a IED blast on the front of the truck, and we had somebody try and lob a grenade in my turret, and I am here literally by a couple inches left or right. If the grenade would have detonated and the shrapnel came through 3 inches left or 3 inches right, we're not having a conversation. But all the shrapnel luckily got caught in my foot, and I traded my foot for 3 people's lives that day, and that's a trade I'll make any day of the week.
Amen. I mean, really, that's a hell of a testimony right there. Again, Peg Leg Raider John Arnold is our guest here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Necessary Roughness. Demon's got one for you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about your son, and could you give us an update about him? Michael, he played at the University of Navy. Well, he played for the Navy, the midshipman.
Yep.
How's he doing?
Thanks, Damon, for asking and thinking about that. Funnily enough, we literally dropped him off less than 5 minutes ago. So we live in Sacramento, or we live in San Antonio. I'm from Sacramento. I'm out in Sacramento right now because my mom turned 70 on Monday.
Nice.
And since she's not in the car, we've been bringing folks in from out of town. So my son came up from San Diego. He's stationed on a destroyer out there. He graduated from the Naval Academy last year, and he's going through and getting his Navy quals. And we're bringing my daughter and stuff in to help celebrate my mom's birthday. Because it's also, one of those. I am blessed to still be here, and so just the ability to see my son and celebrate my mom's birthday, I cherish every minute of it because it really was close for me not to be here.
How much pride do you take in the fact that your son did attend Navy? I mean, I know you were Army, but he was Navy. But just to know that he was doing that and serving his country as well, and even playing football, how much pride did you take in that?
Oh, I have an insane amount of pride in that. Not like anybody, any Army Navy game. All my Army buddies were giving me a hard time for wearing Navy colors. But that's my son's school. That's my son on the field.
Right.
This year I got to wear my Army colors again, but I come from a long military family. So my dad was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. My grandfather served in the Pacific during World War II. My brother-in-law is a Marine. My son, I didn't expect any of my children to join the military. So when my son got recruited from all 3 of them, chose Navy. It was when he swore in the first time, there were tears.
Wow.
When we pinned him, he grabbed his ensign rank is what they call it in the Navy. I was about to say the general rank. But when I got to put his rank on him, luckily it was a huge rainstorm, so you couldn't see it. But there were tears streaming down.
For us out here that really have no idea, that have never been, into the, onto the front line like you guys have been and experienced anything you've experienced, what could we do to help, the veterans that are out there right now that may be trying to, just get reacclimated to life as a civilian?
I would say just talk to them. Every veteran is unique. Every veteran is different. And every veteran has a story that brought them to the military, a story of their military life, and then the story of what that transition piece is. And I would also say extend that to their families. The family unit is such a critical and important part for us while we're doing our military service and especially afterwards. So don't just think about the service member, but also think about the families.
I think that's a great point right there, and that's what I want to make sure that we do and we focus in on as we head into the weekend. Well, thanks so much, man. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Real quick.
Go ahead, my man.
Before you let me off the phone, I got to tell a goofy story real quick. I didn't realize you had Nate Boyer on.
Oh, go for it.
But Nate Boyer is also connected to the Chris Long Foundation, Howie Long's son.
Yep.
And about 5 years ago, I climbed Kilimanjaro with Chris Long and Nate Boyer.
Wow.
And my peg leg itself was up there. But there was a father-son team, so Nate was up there with his dad. And one of the porters was looking at me and looked at me and looked at Nate. And Nate's about 10 years younger than me. He's looking at me and he's looking at Nate, and he points at Nate, and then he points at me and he's like, that's your son? Looking at me. And I was like, nope, but he is now. So from now on, I call that man Papa Nate. I wish I would have known you were going to have him on. I would have had you mess with him for me.
That is funny. Well, we can make that happen. Don't you worry. We can make that happen anyway. We got plenty of time to make that happen. That is an awesome story. I love that. And I didn't realize that you did that. I remember when Chris Long and them were talking about that. And that's a really big deal, man. How was that experience?
That was incredible. Chris is just a genuine dude. Like everything you see about him on this podcast, or anytime you hear about just him and the community service he does, it was the same year he won the Super Bowl with the Eagles and was the Walter Payton Man of the Year. And that man, for real, is genuine. Like that's just who he is on a day-to-day basis. And so I climbed about a week before my 40th birthday.
Wow.
I got back, and in the mail was a autographed photo from Howie Long, and Howie was congratulating me for climbing Kilimanjaro. And it was completely unexpected, out the blue. Not Nate, but Chris told his dad. I don't know if Chris asked for it or if he just told Howie and Howie sent it. But that's the character that the entire Long family. Like, they are just incredible people through and through.
Man, between that and getting your leg autographed by Tom Flores, man, you're living your best life.
My man cave is going to be off the chain, I'll tell you that.
I know that's right. Hey, man, great stuff as always, man. Hey, thank you for your service. Thank your son. Make sure you tell the wife I said hello, man. You guys are awesome people. You know that. Love you like a brother, my man. Thanks so much for everything that you've done.
And thank you for everything. The wife here, and she heard you in the smiling ear to ear. I'll holler at you. I got a training in Vegas in July, so I'll holler at you for that.
So there you go. That's my guy, Peg Leg Raider. You heard from Jess Estrada, Army Vet Jess. You heard from Jay Schrader. As I mentioned, if you want to go back and hear the whole show, you can. On my radio show on Friday, I had Napoleon McCallum, obviously former Raider running back. He was on the show. Had Nate Boyer, the former Green Beret, on the show talking about Veterans Day. Had Lucille on the radio show. And it had a lot of listeners call in that were vets as well and talk about what the show meant to them. Talked about some of their memories in combat, and I'll share one quick story. My guy, Hardcore Raider, he actually called in and said, he was telling us about different experiences he had, and kind of left us with the feeling of how crazy it felt to be, in a car or in a, and I'm going to mess up this story so bad, but in a combat vehicle, going down the road and not knowing who was out there in the fields, if someone was about to, fire some big, who knows, missile at you or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Like, if you were going to get fired on, while you're driving, and it made me think that, dang, man, like, we take it for granted all the time. I get into the car and, I'll drive to LA for a game, or I'll drive to Arizona for the owners meetings or something like that. And I'll be on this long, windy road, and really it's just nobody out there. Never in my mind do I think, oh man, I'm about to get ambushed. But that's what those guys were going through. And it was really an emotional show. So if you want to hear more, lvsportsnetwork.com, you can go to the website. It's up, all of it's podcasted up there. Really good stuff. You can always get it wherever you get your podcast as well. Unnecessary Roughness is the name of the show. But I thought it was a really well done show, really well put together, and definitely think that the military deserves at least one show, right? At the very least, at least one show. So that was my Salute to Service show that I had on Friday. And then, of course, that was some of the sound that you heard from it here on today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up tomorrow, Jay Schrader. No, not Jay Schrader. Jimmy G. We might need to call Jay Schrader, right? Now that Jimmy G is still on the shelf. No, it's going to be Jimmy G. A lot of Jimmy Garoppolo conversation and what that could potentially mean, his injury could potentially mean for the upcoming Raiders season. We'll do that on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.